So next up, let's meet our speakers. So today I'm thrilled to have, gosh, that is small, but we've got Neha Sampat. That's very difficult. I've also got my colleague in my room, who is the CEO of Content Stack, Becky Flint, who is the CEO of Dragon Boat, Marcia Kilgore, who is the CEO of Beauty Pie, which I actually used my Beauty Pie things today, which is why I'm looking glowy today. Paige Thomas is the CEO of Saks Off Fifth. And last but not least, we have Katie Bullard, who is a managing director who recently joined Insight Partners after an illustrious career at a number of scaling software companies. Love Beauty Pie. I'm sure there's a lot of people on here who love Beauty Pie. So our speakers today, as I mentioned, they're going to be speaking for 10 minutes about their careers, but there's so much more to dive into. So please use that Q&A function, and then we're going to come back at the end. So first up, I'm thrilled to welcome Paige Thomas, who is the CEO of Saks Off Fifth, also one of my favorite shopping destinations. And Paige, we are so thrilled to have you here today. But I do see that you've spotlighted Marcia. So Marcia, we're gonna swap you over to Paige. Paige, over to you.
Am I there?
You are there. I can see you. You look fantastic.
Oh, awesome. I am so happy to be here today in honor of Women's History Month. This is going to be a lot of fun, and what a wonderful opportunity to speak as females and support one another and lift each other up. So my goal today is to just share a little bit about my journey and some of the kind of key learnings that keep me going every day. You may say, why fashion? Well, I think that my father said the same thing. I remember as a young kid being in my bedroom waiting to get the new fashion magazine in September, and I'm aging myself, right? Because these magazines used to be this thick and everything's gone digital. But I would make posters, and now I know they're concept boards, but I still hear my dad in the back saying, you've got to get a real job, like, what does this really mean? Well, my story here is that you've got to wake up every day and love what you do. And I love fashion, and it drove me then. And when I went to school, I decided I was going to do a practice interview with my favorite company that I would shop at, May Company, because I used to do the 15-hour back to school sales and shopping trips. And that's where I fell into retail, and I never looked back. And it's been an incredible journey for me. And I will say that my dad does tell me today that clearly you proved me wrong, and you can make a career out of retail. So that's part of my initial journey. But again, really the passion about waking up every day and loving what you do. And it's been a wild ride for me. When I think about retail, spending over 25 years in the business, and when I started in regional department stores, and that's when customers were going to the mall. And when I think about my career journey and remaining relevant from a career perspective, I really had to think all the time about how do I stay relevant and how does the industry stay relevant? And it actually drove many of my career decisions. So I think about, how important it is to go where the customer is going. So 25 years ago, there wasn't really off mall. And by the way, we didn't even have cell phones. Yes, I am aging myself again. And today, nobody goes anywhere without their phone, right? We're on it, and you think about digital and online. And so that journey, I believe, is really what led me to my current role as CEO of Saks Off Fifth, leading the .com business. And when I think about the customer and the amount of change that's happened in retail, the learning for me is to embrace change. You kind of have to just run at it. If you're going to dodge it, right, you're going to be status quo. You're not going to elevate yourself. You're not going to elevate others. And so really looking through the lens of a customer is always what has driven me and influenced my decisions, my career moves. So I started in regional department store. I then spent about 10 years with Kohl's department store, which was off mall. And the story behind that was really, putting stores where people live. and making it easy for people to shop. When I joined Kohl's, it was 384 stores. I thought I'd really grown up from regional, right? And when I left that organization, it was 1,160 stores. They're a little bit in the news right now, so we'll see what happens. But that's been, that drove that decision. And then when I fast forward, I took an opportunity with Nordstrom in their off-price business, and I was the chief merchant. And when I think about, again, these secular trends that were happening, there was off-mall, and then there was digital, and then there was off-price. You know, the TJ Maxx's of the world really started to build the off-price business and doubled their store count in a matter of 10 years. The entire off-price industry took market share from 17 to 26%. The beauty of my role with Nordstrom was the opportunity to launch NordstromRack.com, the online off-price business. And that was, again, unheard of. So digital was growing, but not really in the off-price space. And so when you think about being where customers want to shop, you sort of had to take that business there. And it was, and still today, the off-price online business is much smaller. So the big guys with Marmaxx, Burlington, and Ross don't necessarily play there. But the beauty of that is, again, it brought me to my current role, leading SaksOffFifth.com and being relevant in a digital place and off-price with all these, you know, secular trends coming together. So my career journey, when I think about my career journey and these experiences that I call built my toolkit to be able to be successful, I would be remiss if I didn't really think about and share in that journey the growth of leadership. As you grew in leadership level, and in particular as a female, you weren't looking at a lot of your peers across the table, right? When I got the VP title or the SVP title. And that was, you know, a learning for me about mentorship and partnering with people to help me navigate. Nobody told me how to work in a boardroom, right? You kind of show up and you got to figure it out, or you can really navigate and build partners and peers. And so that's been really critical for me too, as I've, you know, blazed this trail of my career and thought about these new experiences that I wasn't sure what I was going to run into. One of my most favorite stories I'll share quickly, and then I'll close, is I became the VP Divisional Merchandise Manager of the women's business, which was the largest business. It was like my dream job. All I could think about at that moment was the excitement of the job. And I will tell you, it was the most difficult transition I've ever had as a leader. All of a sudden, I had 27 women reporting to me, and I was younger than all of them. And they didn't really like that. You know, right? Like when I was a peer or a partner, it was like, oh, that was kind of, you know, that was good. I like her. And now all of a sudden she's my boss. And that transition was so difficult. I actually went to one of my mentors and said, you know, I don't know if I love this. I don't, you know, I got to be passionate and motivated every day to wake up. And he was very direct with me and said, basically, stop your madness. Do what you do well. And lead people, make them love you, teach them how to think, get some wins under your belt, lift them up, basically be a leader, be a mentor. And that was such a wonderful learning for me. It literally shifted my entire paradigm of how I thought about leadership. And my goal today is so much less. For sure, it's about results. We all want to win, but it's how do I help my team win? How do I really lead the group that I'm supporting and teaching people how to think? So I will close quickly. I'm a huge sports fan. For any of those that know me, we're in the middle of March Madness. And no question, people are your greatest asset. So when I think about retail, it's a team sport. And you own your starting five, you own your team, you own their development, you own their coaching, and you own their motivation. And that has really what drives me today is leadership and giving back.
Wow. I absolutely loved that. And I couldn't agree more. Everything is a team sport. And I've also recently got into March Madness. So tell us who your teams are and tell me who your picks are, everyone in the chat, because I need some support there to beat my boyfriend. Next up, Neha Sampat is the CEO of Content Stack. And I'm also going to give 2 plugs here. Neha was also one of our founding CEOs that joined us on the CEO Scale Up Pledge. And was such an incredibly valuable voice as we worked as Insight to understand how we could truly help our portfolio companies. The second plug I'm going to give is that Neha actually runs a really great podcast. I'm going to pop the link into the chat because I love listening to it, and I love listening how she brings other leaders and finds the inspiring stories. So now I'm thrilled that we're going to be able to hear some of hers.
Thank you, Nikki, and thanks for the plugs there. Appreciate it. Paige, that was super inspiring and really brought me back to some of the early days of my career as well. And I love that you brought up your father and the role that he played in kind of like this constant challenge, because I had that as well. My dad would always say, wait a minute, what are you trying to do now? But he was also my biggest fan. So I also feel like, just super lucky that I had both the challenge to try to beat what he thought I could or couldn't do, but also his support along the way. I think I'm going to tell a story of sort of the road less traveled, because I've spent over 20 years in tech, but I majored in French and communications. And so I didn't have tech in mind when I started my career. And I actually started my career in public relations, and I was doing PR for healthcare and found that I was kind of bored. And so I looked for what was cool. And at that time, also dating myself, it was .com in Silicon Valley. So I moved out to Silicon Valley to pursue something more fast-paced and interesting, but I didn't really know what that was. And I started a career in public relations in tech. And 6 months into that, I decided that I wanted to run my own firm. So I left the firm I was in, started my own PR firm, and that was the beginning of my career as an entrepreneur beyond just a student entrepreneur. And I quickly learned that I loved products, and working with a lot of product managers and product marketers, I decided to pursue a career in product marketing. Also started off really young, 23, working at Sun Microsystems, managing products for Unix geeky systems, and found myself also managing over 20 people, almost all of them older than me, most of them engineers, and found myself in a really awkward position. So that was the beginning of me learning that you have to figure out what's unique about yourself. And I was a non-technical female CEO, a non-technical female that wanted to be a CEO, had been a CEO at a PR firm. I decided that I was going to start a product company at some point, quickly went to VMware to run their e-commerce platform, realized that I had a passion for web and for building things. And that was the beginning of me starting my first enterprise software company. This is almost 15 years ago. It was a consulting company helping brands that were trying to get on the bandwagon of all this digital transformation and figure out how to use cloud and how to deal with everybody having mobile apps. And a lot of what Paige was talking about really resonated, because everybody's trying to engage with digital in different ways, and nobody really knew how to do it at that time. So I started a company to help brands figure out how to do that. And in doing that, it was all bootstrapped. And for almost 10 years, I was running a company, led it to profitability, and did it in a bootstrapped way, which was also not normal in Silicon Valley. So non-technical CEO, bootstrapping an enterprise software company, ended up building multiple products. And I found myself in 2016 with a profitable portion of my business, which was all professional services, implementing all kinds of software, doing all these really cool digital experiences. But I had built an integration platform as a service, which was a brand new category. And I had built a content management platform that was ready for the world of omnichannel and new digital. And I was just sitting on all this really great stuff and had no capital besides what I had from the services business. And so I ended up in a kind of accelerator type program. I don't know if you've heard of Springboard, really focused on females in technology. And it was a pivotal moment for me because I'm sitting in front of these women. I think I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. They're all women that have successfully led businesses, exited businesses, taken companies public. And they're telling me that I'm wrong. And I'm just sitting there like defending my strategy. No, I've got this profitable thing. I've got these products. They're leading in the industry. They're category changers. And they tell me that I need to split up my company. And it felt like someone was telling me that my baby was ugly and all kinds, just like this moment. And so I took it, I listened, I kind of fought back. And then I realized the feedback was making me uncomfortable because I wasn't ready to admit that maybe I was wrong, or maybe I wasn't doing things the right way. Fast forward about a year, I took all of the advice. I actually restructured the entire organization to become 3 separate lines of business. And on January 1st of 2018, I restructured the company into 3 separate companies. And in doing that, I had a services company, an integration platform as a service, which was called Built.io, and what is today Content Stack. And overnight, just by changing the way that we were structured, I quadrupled the value of the companies because now I had 2 SaaS companies and a professional services company. So all along, the feedback I got was absolutely straight on and right on. And the lesson that I learned is that you kind of have to be open to, you might not know what you're doing. And people that do might be able to lift you up. And so I spent some time kind of just reflecting on that. And I think the first and foremost thing is that you shouldn't be afraid of feedback that makes you uncomfortable. And so I took that feedback. We, from that point, continued to run the professional services company, hired new leadership to drive that, sold Built.io to Software AG and had a really nice major exit in late 2018. And then in 2019, joined the Insight family when I raised a $31 million Series A and have since raised another $57 million. So now I'm $89 million into running a company that's been in the market for 3 years and is now a category leader for content management. So the journey can take you in different places. You can start off as a French major and end up building an enterprise category leader. And I think that it's just fun that you can explore that you should follow your passions and do it in a way that you're surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you and that might lift you up. And don't be afraid that you might not know everything and that you might not be right and that you might make mistakes and you can learn from them, but also be true to what's important to you. And for me, that was building a legacy and building a place where people love to work and do the most significant work of their career and focusing on customers that want to build the best digital experiences in the market. And that all came from me wanting to do that 20 years ago when I was being challenged to do that in the market. So hire people that are super smart, continue to do that. And just remember that there are more than one path to the finish line. And whatever that means to you, just follow it and bring people up along the way. And I love that Paige ended on that note as well. It really is about leadership, and leadership is lifting other people up and ensuring that everyone gets the opportunity to do their best work.
Absolutely love that. And I agree. I think, one of Insight's core values is commitment to continuous reinvention. And I think you've shown that as well. And it's critical for everyone in careers is to have that grit, have that perspective. So thank you so much for sharing that. That was truly fantastic. So next up, if you want to change the screen, there we go. Next up, we have Becky Flint, who is the CEO of Dragon Boat. And so it is so great to have you, Becky. I love also the oar in the background. I'm hoping there's some like cool story about that. But over to you.
Thank you, Nikki. And it's so inspiring hearing from you, Paige, and Neha, about your journey. And so my name is Becky Flint. I'm a founder and CEO of Dragon Boat. We've been around 4 years now, and that's the word, not for Dragon Boat, but it's kind of the boat theme. So my journey is kind of similar in a way where really didn't plan to get to where I am today. And interestingly, Neha, you mentioned you came to Silicon Valley from a different major. I also came from Silicon Valley when I was in my early 20s from China. I want to go to business. I came from a science background. I really want to do business. So I came over here, and the .com was happening. And there's just a lot of people go work at a startup. I was learning finance. And next thing you know, I just joined one of my classmates, a startup, and started building websites for companies of all sizes. And then next thing you know, I end up saying, hey, we have the same problem that companies could not have a way to manage their excess inventories and supplies for manufacturing parts for computers in Taiwan, which is like the biggest center to manufacturing all the electronics. So I have a previous partner in Taiwan. I started a tech company here in US when I was still in school. So it was really fun, exciting. I know nothing about technology. I don't know how to code, and I taught myself how to code. I learned like SQLs and write programmings, and had a lot of fun. But timing wasn't great. So .com obviously went away, and the computer manufacturer, all the things took a big hit. And next thing you know, I was kind of out of job as an international student about to graduate and try to figure out what I do. I was really lucky to end up finding a role in a major bank in San Francisco. And it was, I get settled in, I'm safe. It was really feel comfortable for a moment. But sort of the root of following your passion, do something different and making more changes slightly kind of come back to me after being in the bank for a while. Like that pace is just not the same. So as I was looking around, there's a little company caught my eye. And this company is called PayPal. It's in a financial, it's kind of connected to what I was studying in school. It's in technology, and it was growing. So I went on trying to find a role there. So the first part of the first lesson I learned in my journey is to take a step down for growth. So when I was coming to PayPal, there was only the role was available to me was quote unquote 2 level below I was currently. But the company was growing, so very exciting, it was in technology. So, and I got to lead international expansion projects. So I said, great, I'm just gonna take it. Even though a lot of people say, you have to stay in this company, it's safe, it's not tech, and you're giving up your step, you finally establish yourself something. And I still just decided to take a step down so I can learn and grow in the company. And obviously the rest of the history, I was lucky enough to grow with the company, to be able to lead international expansion from 4 countries at that time to pretty much every country in the world. So it was an amazing journey, met a lot of amazing people, and I learned a lot of things. So second part of the interesting thing is that in the big company, we, as the PayPal started to get bigger, there's a saying, kind of, your places and work the ladder. So what happened was at that time, the growth and the building product at PayPal became very, very challenging. That the roadmap became a great lock because everyone is dependent on everyone else. Digital product means that you need multiple teams to build product. Everyone has dependencies. Every team has their priorities, and every initiative is important. So we could not move. And I was leading one of the most complex and cross-functional product area. So what do we do? And I try to figure out how do we solve the problem. It's solving my own problem because the credit product area is very cross-functional, very dependent on everyone else. I came out with a solution. Leverage my finance background and project management background, a product management background into something we call portfolio management. So I talking to my manager, talking to my colleagues, say, I think we should change the way we do things. We have to solve this differently because we're building software, it's different product line. We should do portfolio management. And I want to say, you're doing fine, you're growing your career, don't take a risk, ruin your reputation. This is above your pay grade. Get someone else to solve the problem. But I had to raise my hand. I went to my VP's office and say, look, we need to solve this. We have to work things differently. We should do portfolio managing the company. And so I was very lucky. The VP of our division, he's also a forward thinker. He actually now is the CIO at Airbnb now. So he said, sure, let's do it. So I was this person, definitely not at MVP or transformational leadership level, but I was given the opportunity to implement this portfolio management. And the rest of the history, we created this whole practice. We created this whole profession called portfolio management, and we implemented quarterly planning like 15 years before today, where everyone said no, everyone's freaking out. And we created this new role, portfolio managers. Today is called product operations, and the first cohort of them, now they are all CEOs and founders and senior executives across the globe. So I was very, very excited to step up above my pay grade and took a jump to do something not what I was supposed to do in my role, and really made an impact. It was really meaningful. And sort of quickly wrapping up to what happened to today. So what I did at PayPal, the process, the practice, the internal tooling I built, as I went from PayPal to a few more amazing companies, realized the challenge is the same. The problem is the same, different scale, the same problem. So that really ultimately led to the start of Dragonboat. So Dragonboat really is the passion of solving the problem of helping the team work together, building product at different scale, and everyone kind of getting rolling the same direction. So the company of Dragonboat was a problem what I try to solve and have solved from company to company, and ultimately become a standalone business. We're supporting amazing product companies around the world. So I want to just kind of wrap up a little bit of, obviously Dragonboat is not a boat, it's not a kayak, it's not done by one person. And the name of a Dragonboat really represents team working together, team collaborating together. That's also my personal belief as well along the way, just because my role. So since the start of my career, I benefit a ton from different mentors at different functions. So I have made a pledge, both internally and everyone I work with, is to pay it forward, so that I join mentorship communities and programs. I recently just announced 100 mentorship sessions at Plateau. So I think this forum group is also amazing. Give us opportunity. One is to learn from each other, and also pay it forward with the others who could be more senior than me in some areas, or vice versa. I feel that's a lot of learning for us, just being open and supportive and help each other see potentially our blind spots and giving opportunity to do things we haven't done before.
I absolutely love that. I'm hearing team. And that's something that I absolutely love about Insight Partners Growing Network, is that we're all in one team. We might be at different companies, but we're each other's team members and teammates, and we're here to support. Becky, that was incredibly inspirational. And I also, another thing I loved was, it sounded like you were questioning throughout your career, your decisions and your choices and your path, but now look how logical it is and logical it feels. So I think that's something that we all need to remember, is that in the moment, it can feel a little bit out of left field, or a bit unique or different, or a challenge. But usually when that moment of self-reflection, or when we drag you up on stage in front of couple hundred people, it all becomes very clear and feels very logical. So next up, I'm extremely excited to introduce Marcia, who is the CEO of Beauty Pie, to tell us about her journey.
Hey everybody, so nice to be here today, and I have to say I feel really inspired by the stories of Paige, Neha, and Becky. I found myself sort of nodding vigorously through the whole thing, because there's so many lessons that I think I've learned as well, and that really feel very true to my heart. I actually made a long list for this, so I think I'm just going to go through my list. And weirdly, I'm not a list maker. I usually just ramble, which is probably why I wanted to make a list, so that this would make some sense. And I wanted to start out, and it was actually a point that Becky kind of made in a more roundabout way, that what I've found through now 32 years of being in business, and I suppose like 31 of having a beauty business or a footwear business of one kind or another, that weaknesses are actually our opportunities. There are opportunities for learning, things that have happened in your career or in your life that have maybe been negative or positive, but very often the things that we find very challenging in the moment are actually the big opportunities for us later on. And so, as you know, as an executive who will struggle through, all of the hard parts of being in business as everybody does. I always like to think, while I'm in a particular moment that might be very hard, that I know that later that hardship is going to come to really benefit me. I'm going to learn something from it. And it helps you get through those moments in such a better way, because if anyone hasn't read Simon Sinek and all of his books and watched all of his TED Talks, and you've got to, right? I usually have a reading list, but he's so great. And he wrote a book called The Infinite Game. And he talks about how business is, you're never really up. You're never a team that's always winning. You're going to win, you're going to lose, you're going to be somewhere in the middle. And ideally, you're winning more than you're losing, and therefore you come out somewhere on the top. And, that's what, of course, running a successful business is about. But life is also an infinite game. And so all of those things that will feed into your life and your business that are hard at any given time are actually really valuable to you at another time. So embrace them, try and learn from them, listen to them, and think about what you're going to get out of them. Couple of cases in point, I opened a facial business in 1993 called Let's Face It, which turned into another business called Bliss, which I then sold to LVMH in 1999. And I opened it because I had really terrible skin. I had chronic acne. Nobody could fix it. I had bought every product. I had been to every facial salon. I had been shamed by every Eastern European facialist that I went to. And I turned that into a big opportunity, which was, let me have people come in and have facials for me, and I'm going to be nice to them. I'm going to make them feel good instead of making them feel bad. I'm going to soft sell them the products that they actually really need and will have a great benefit for their skin, rather than hard selling them stuff by making them feel terrible about themselves. And it really turned into, the feel good place of downtown New York. It was like the spa that ate Manhattan, and a really great business, but just by doing something where I saw a big hole in the market. After that, I opened an ergonomic footwear business. It's called FitFlop. I still own it. And it was because I actually have very wide feet, very high arches. Couldn't find anything cool to wear that fit my feet and were comfortable. So I loved shopping at Barney's, God rest its soul. But when Barney, all the shoes that I would buy, I actually wouldn't be able to walk in. So I thought, there's got to be a better solution. And went and, created a shoe that was super comfortable to wear and actually looked cute on your feet, and that I could walk everywhere that I wanted to go and get a little bit of extra exercise and alignment at the same time. And then Beauty Pie, which is my most recent one, after I had sold my last beauty business, I no longer had access to all of these, really fantastic products from labs for, very inexpensive prices. I used to get everything for free from all the third-party labs that we would develop products with. And I still wanted that, but I didn't have a brand. So I thought, let me start a buyer's club where all the women who are really interested in all the really good beauty products but don't want to pay through the nose for them can have access to them. So there are always kind of things that I wanted to invent for myself. And they were sort of weaknesses, I suppose, in my life, but I turned them into opportunities. And I think everybody can do that as well. Another piece of advice I would give everyone is it's really important to know your brain and how it works. So whether you have done a Myers-Briggs typography index profile or one of those other sort of brain categorizing tests, I think they're really good. They're really good for letting you know how you naturally think and how you naturally respond. And also knowing what you tend to avoid, how you tend to react to things that make you uncomfortable, just so that it's right in front of you. Knowing yourself and knowing how the brain works. We should all study that, I think, for a year before we even go into business. It should be part of a high school curriculum. And the more that you can know about how you will naturally respond to something, so that you can go, is this logical? Is this rational? Because people are not rational. There's a lot of behavioral science work done around how irrational people can be. If you haven't read Dan Ariely's Predictably Irrational, please do. If you haven't read The Art of Thinking Clearly, please read that too. It's amazing just to read through that and think, oh my God, I do that all the time, because you can be so much more effective and efficient when you know that your brain will tend to do this, and that is something from evolution, and it's something that you need to let go of if you actually want to make rational and right response decisions. Again, and I think this goes back to everything that Paige and Becky and Neha already said, is you want to surround yourself with people who will challenge you and won't just nod and say, yes, you're right, right? If someone's arguing with you, listen, but listen in order to learn and listen in order to understand rather than listening in order to respond. Right? I read somewhere that a lot of us go into meetings with a tremendous amount of anxiety because we're worried about how smart we're going to look. And I think we can all think, oh yeah, sometimes I go into a meeting and I think, oh my God, I don't know anything about this. How am I going to contribute? And actually, maybe you don't contribute in a meeting, and that's perfectly okay. You might actually be in a meeting. The best thing that you can do in that meeting is shut up and just listen. You don't have to say anything. And to Becky's point, when she had all of those mentors telling her, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Or was it Neha? Neha, was you, wasn't it you? Yes, I think, just nod. I think so, yes. And then you split your company up. It was like, well, if you were just defensive at the beginning, but then when you went back and you listened, you actually realized they were right. And boy, if we could all just go in to listen and not to be defensive. I think I work on that every day, just as, personally to go, okay, actually, maybe you have a point here. And instead of responding and kicking it back immediately, try and absorb it and listen to understand what people are saying rather than listening to respond. Other quick ones, because I'm probably running out of time already. The best decision for your business is always the one that increases customer trust, right? Sometimes you will come up against these decisions where you're like, you know what? They just produced 40,000 pairs of shoes and the toe box is too small. Should we launch these and hope that people have smaller toes? Or should we not launch these and eat, $1.6 million? What's the better decision? And actually the better decision is not to launch them and to go negotiate with the factory and try and get some cost off. But cleaning up when you've made the wrong decision that doesn't increase your customer trust will take you 10 times as long, and you have to dig yourself out of a hole that you've built for yourself. And it's never, ever, ever worth it. So always, I actually have that posted on my wall. How much time do I have? Nikki, how much time do I have?
I feel like we can probably go forever, but I might call you there so that, because we're getting so many good questions coming in, and I'm going to bring you all back. But Marcia, I'm going to ask you to do one thing as well, and actually to all of my speakers, pop those books you were mentioning in the chat, because there were some great ones. I already saw that, some people have already bought them on Amazon. They're probably going crazy. But Neha, Paige, Becky, Katie, I would love to hear your books as well that inspired you. Clearly, we've got some voracious readers. But Marcia, thank you so much for that. And someone in my team actually messaged and said, wow, she is a woman that when there's a problem, she goes and starts a business to solve it. And that alone is so inspiring and so energetic. So thank you for sharing that. And Katie, up next, one of my wonderful colleagues who has such a fantastic career and story. So over to you.
Thank you, Nikki. Well, first of all, I think my jaw is like sore from smiling and nodding so much as I have listened to the stories of the 4 women in front of me. I'm going to try to hit on the things that they haven't hit on, but I can 100% guarantee that you are going to hear some of the same themes as I tell this story. So I figured what I'll do is I'll very briefly talk about my career and my journey, and then really focus on the 3 things I wish I knew when I had entered leadership, because probably those are the things I really failed at and I would have been able to navigate a little bit easier. So I have a very nonlinear route to tech leadership. I think we heard that a couple of times through the stories. I actually did not get into tech until my late 20s. I've never founded a tech business. I'm like the last person to adopt anything. I think I held on to my BlackBerry longer than anyone else, but I actually started my career in real estate development. I did found a real estate development company with my husband, and I thought that's what I was going to do in my career. I was going to build amazing developments, and actually found myself accidentally working at a PE-backed real estate development software company in my late 20s. That was the transition between those 2 things. I still don't know how I actually ended up at this company, and I still don't know why that person took a chance on me, but I'm so grateful. So that's actually lesson 1, like take advantage of opportunities that they present, even if you have no idea how you landed there. So within the first 5 years working in technology, I had the opportunity to wear a chief of staff hat, which kind of meant I was like an Uber project manager for the CEO. But really what it meant was I was a seat filler. Anytime there was a leadership gap, I got to go do that thing. So I ran recruiting for 6 months. I ran marketing for a year. I built a BDR team from the ground up. I ran sales ops. We didn't have product management. So I had to figure out how to build a product management function. And I will say right now, I was never the best specialist at any one of those things. But what it did allow me to do was it allowed me to see how all the parts of a technology organization work together. And I realized that I loved that. I loved connecting the dots. I loved solving problems, and I loved building things. And so my advice to anyone, this is the advice I give anyone asking, like, how do I rise in my career? How do I get promoted? Is do your current job really, really well, like crush it. Find ways to go offer to help work on the things that are the biggest challenges in the business or the biggest opportunities in the business, and then build a team around those things full of people that are way better than you are at those, so that you can go on and figure out how to scale the next great thing. So that always learning mindset, I think, is really what ultimately propelled me to become president at ZoomInfo, which was DiscoverOrg originally at the time, and president at A Cloud Guru over the last 5 years, both which were really amazing growth companies. We scaled them from about 20 million to almost, north of 100 million, sometimes north of 300 million during that time. And I will say I had this moment at both of those where, at DiscoverOrg, ZoomInfo, we had merged the businesses. We were getting ready to go public. At ATG, we merged with Pluralsight. We had this $500 million business. I had these moments at both of those companies where I realized, like, what I loved to do was scaling the high growth part of scaling the business from 20 million to 100, the startup to grown up phase. And I felt really guilty, to be honest, that that was the part that was fun to me, and that I wanted to go do that again. And I remember talking to a board member who happened to be a female board member, telling her this story, saying, I feel really guilty. Like, these are super successful companies. I want to stay here. There's a great opportunity, but I love this other phase. And she was like, Katie, don't ever apologize for what you love to do. That is the hardest stage of a company's growth. And if you are good at it and you love to do it, just go figure out a way to go do that over and over again. And I felt like this huge weight lifted off me when she said that. So that's ultimately how I ended up at Insight Partners. I realized I wanted to go help partner with visionary founders and CEOs to help them scale the businesses, help them see around the corner, and there's not a better place to do it. So let me talk about the 3 lessons three things I wish I knew before I started my career. The first one is I wish that I knew that the rise through leadership would not be about competence and intelligence and dependability and willingness to work harder than anyone. Or I should say that it would not only be about those things. It is about those things when you're in school, right? You're in school, you work harder, you get the best grades, you move to the top. It's a very objective rise. And it is important that you do all of those things. And those things continue to be really important as you rise through leadership. But once you get to the executive level, it is just as important, and then sometimes more important, that you know how to build relationships with people, that you know how to build trust with people, that you spend time being vulnerable and basically creating an environment where the other person, whether that's your boss or whoever, can be vulnerable with you as well. And I will say I was very naive about that, and I probably did not prioritize that as much early in my career as I did getting the right answer and doing the right thing and solving the problem the right way. And I had an executive coach who helped me work through that. And it was the single biggest important learning of my career as I went from, a VP level up to the president level. I see a lot of people who struggle with that in the same way. And I would not have been able to actually manage through that without having that coach and without having a network of other female leaders who'd been in the exact same position as me. The second thing is I was surprised at how prevalent unconscious bias is. I sort of in my brain knew that there's going to be some outright discrimination, and I would have to get in there and stop some kind of bad behavior. But honestly, the most prevalent issue that you face is subtle, unconscious, often unintentional bias, and it gets worse and worse the higher you move up in an organization. And my honest experience has been that the fastest way to break that bias is actually to have your male allies partner with you to push the change. Because if it's just the females in an organization trying to break a double standard, it will not always work. And so I'm so proud to have been able to partner with so many male allies who will stand up and won't tolerate it. But I would say, like, go find allies in that, for the cause as well. And then finally, I'm going to speak very quickly to anybody who is in a sales role in this organization on this webinar. I wish I knew how critical sales leadership was to moving up the ladder, especially when you're not a founder of a business or when you're an operator coming in. A few years ago when I was at ZoomInfo, we did this really interesting research piece on gender diversity in the C-suite. And the stats are not unique. Probably everybody's heard them, right? Diversity is really low across CEOs. It's really low across CROs. It's higher in HR, marketing, and product roles. But what dawned on me as we were doing that, and then as I was moving through different roles, was that I actually think the biggest challenge to getting more women into a CEO role is to get more women into the CRO role first, because it's something that every board member looks for. It's a key criteria when you're hiring for a CEO. Women make fantastic salespeople, they make fantastic sales leaders, and yet all of those unconscious biases that exist more in the sales realm than anywhere else. So I'm super passionate about this. I want all of you sales leaders to keep pushing. If we can get more female CROs, we will also get more female CEOs. So that was just a few lessons learned, Nikki. Hopefully I left us some time for questions.
You did, and you're staying right there. That was fantastic. And Ben, I so agree. What a fantastic group of leaders. And I'll extend that kudos to my team who actually helped us set this up. So we do have a couple great questions. So we're going to bring all of our speakers back on momentarily. But Katie, because you're on my screen, you're going to start. This is a controversial one and an interesting one. We've seen the reaction to Kardashian's advice to women about working harder. And that was, that took the Twitter sphere by storm. So Katie, I'll start with you, but now I've got all my women up. How are you and how can we all help women overcome barriers and achieve equality? You just gave me one really, really great example of finding a male ally. Do you have another nugget of gold? And then I'd welcome any of our other speakers to jump in with.
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree with the fact that my experience has been women have to prove themselves over and over again more often than men do, right? They have to kind of work harder to do that over and over again. But I don't think emphasizing that is the approach that always works. I think what's true for anybody, whether it's a male or female, is that you put your focus on making the organization successful, on making your team successful. And I think the problem is that sometimes women, because of the environment we're in, feel like we have to spend more of the time focusing on like our own performance. And so I think we have to create an environment for the entire organization that really emphasizes and values the ability to really kind of drive to make everybody focus on driving improvements for the organization versus proving yourself. I don't know if that's a great answer, but and then looking for, right, a leadership team that really, really values that emphasizes that and creates the infrastructure to allow you to do that.
Love it. Becky, do you have, Neha, you're next.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So I think about it a little bit differently. If we look at like Kardashian, she was born into access. And most people that don't unlock their full potential, it's because they don't have access to the opportunities to do so, or they don't have the relatability, which Paige talked about really early on. Do you see people that are in positions that look like you or that have gone on similar paths or journeys as you? And I almost feel like it's our responsibility, everybody on this call, not just the speakers, to create that. And it's about like, let's keep moving up the ladder together and then lifting others up and creating that relatability, because it's going to be a generational thing. Like we need to keep doing this. We need to create that awareness that all of us have the opportunity to take things to the next level, and we have to level the playing field together. And so I think it's a little bit of that, and like that comment and all the controversy around it is really just about like just not having the context.
Mm-hmm. Becky, over to you, and then Marcia, I've got a good one for you, and Paige after that. Good question.
Yeah, I think that unlocking the opportunity is definitely something really key. If we never give an opportunity to take things that we are not otherwise be qualified for or had experience for, then we won't really be able to do and make things happen and solving problems that wouldn't otherwise be solved a different way. So I think a lot of times we talk about mentorship, and it's different from pay to forward. It's different from sponsorship. And a lot of times for us, just giving advice doesn't open opportunities, doesn't give people the things to do. We know women tend to look for jobs, check 95% of the qualifications. Men probably check 5% of qualifications. So I have, looking back myself, I was never an engineer, I was never in tech. I'm not qualified but I am qualified. I can solve the problem. I can learn it. Given the opportunity I created for myself, I want to create it to other men or women, right? And it's say, hey, I can see you have elements of experience, elements of a strength that you can take this role. So when we started Dragonbow, the startup company, obviously part of that is the resourcing. Part of that, I really think that we can find people bringing the portfolio of skills and coming together. Someone has this elements of skill and experience, someone has the others, and they can fill in the gap while work together as a team. So to your point, like working hard is a given. You just have to put in the effort. It's not easy. But the main thing is giving people the opportunity and help them see the potential that they actually achieve that, and then give them the environment to be successful. So mentorship, sponsorship, and giving them the opportunity. So it has to all come together and make the change for especially for women.
I love that. And actually, when I scroll through the list of who's joined, there are so many male allies on here that are champions for their colleagues and their peers. And so it isn't just women helping women. It is truly all of us being aware and thinking through how we can help break down these barriers. So I love that. Marcia, I've got one for you because look, personally, I believe vulnerability is strength. And you were so just saying, I had cystic acne and it wasn't going away. That is so vulnerable to share, but look where it got you. What are some other good examples of vulnerability being a strength, or some other ways that you think about bringing vulnerability into a stellar career?
I think, anytime it's empathy, isn't it? Vulnerability is also, I guess, synonymous with empathy. And knowing your customer and knowing what your customer actually wants or needs is all reliant on empathy. So if you go back to being vulnerable, when you are vulnerable, Katie talked about that a lot, it allows you to understand what other people are feeling as well. And when you can understand what other people are feeling on that very base level, then you're able to provide a solution for it, hopefully, if you can think of one, or come up, with other people, think of what a solution for that is. So I think more generally, when you are vulnerable, you are empathetic. When you're empathetic, you are open. When you are open, you see so many different opportunities and possibilities. And so you can simplify it right down to that. That's a career, being able to see all of the opportunities, connect all the dots, connect the dots in new ways, because, why not? I had a fantastic guy who used to work at the front desk at Bliss, which was my very first sort of business that was on the map. And he was a costume designer. Actually, he was a fashion designer, but he never quite made it. So he was always really struggling, and he was the hippest guy, always looked really cool, but just never quite got there. And I lost touch with him. And when the internet started, I got back in touch with him because I found him, had him over for dinner, and he showed up and he was looking really hip and cool. And I said, so what are you up to? Thinking that he was gonna say, oh, I'm still struggling to this, that, and the other thing. But actually he had just finished being on tour with Celine Dion and was starting a tour with Wynton Marsalis. And I said, what happened? And he said, what? I woke up one day and I just thought to myself, why not me? I am worthy. And I think it is that sort of openness, right? The humility, the empathy, and then it opens you up to all kinds of inspirations and possibilities.
I love that. And so, Paige, I've got a question for you, but I'm also going to come back to all of you. So I'm going to tell you so you have time to think, and then Paige, you get to go last as well. But the question after I ask Paige a question is, what, in one word, what do you want to be remembered for in your career? But before we get there, Paige, we had a great question here, and you know, I've heard a lot about mentors and asking people for advice and getting other people to weigh in for the good and the bad. But so when taking in advice from others, how do you go about it? Do you look at a small trusted group of advisors? Are you crowdsourcing? How do you navigate this world of advice and make it actionable?
I love that question. And I think when I look at my mentorships and my partners and advisors, I really do have, in asking that question, I have different approaches. So when I think about my personal career, my professional career, it is a very small group of trusted partners, a few that have been along the journey with me, where I can really share what I'm thinking, what I'm looking for. I think I covered it a little bit in my opening, which is, have I finished what I needed to get accomplished in this current role, and where do I need to go, and how should I be thinking about my career? On the other front, when I think about, in particular, it became so apparent joining the organization as the president of Saks Fifth, entering into COVID, literally 30 days after I had taken this large leadership role. And, you know, so many of us faced with things that we had never, you know, my toolkit didn't matter. The playbook didn't matter, because everything that we were faced with was something new. And that was a broader external partnerships of people. And I love Marcia talking about the vulnerability. I had to be vulnerable. I didn't know everything. I wasn't an expert, you know, with regards to P&L. I wasn't an expert with regards to supply chain. I wasn't an expert in, you know, I grew up as a chief merchant and was focused on the customer. So that was a really important opportunity for me to kind of go back through the Rolodex and outreach and be vulnerable to people that I trusted based on their roles, their expertise. So I think it's a balance. In summary, it's a balance of those that are really trusted allies, will think about you first. You have to be the advocate of your future, and then be vulnerable to and with people that are really smart and can help you navigate.
I love that. And, you know, lots of buzzwords: team, vulnerability, trust, empathy. So now one word to close us out, and I'm going to go in alphabetical order by first name. So Becky, you're going to be first. In one word, what do you want to be remembered for?
I would call it enabler. So I think it's between empowering and supporting. You know, I can't be just the supporting. I cannot just be empowering. I think being able to enable is something I strive to do. Is also what Dragonbow is about. We enable companies to do great things. So
Love it.
Enabling.
Katie.
Thank you.
Partnership. I hope people think of me, whether it's somebody who works for me, with me, that I worked for, that I partnered with them to make them more successful.
I love that. Marcia.
I would say authenticity.
Beautiful word.
Just like to keep it real.
Real talk from the top. Neha.
I'm going to have to say dream maker. Like, I have a whole podcast around it, but it's about helping people realize their dreams.
I love that. Another plug. The podcast is fantastic. Please go listen to it, everyone. And last but not least, Paige.
Well, this might be the obvious, but coach.
I love that.
You know, someone that grew up in, you know, sat in that chair before and helped rise people up to go after the same dreams that I had as a young professional.
I love that. Well, I'm seeing it come through, but thank you for all of you coming and being coaches today, sharing some of your advice, helping some of the exceptional talent across our ecosystem. This was truly humbling, inspiring, wonderful. So thank you for helping us close out International Women's History Month with this wonderful event. So thank you everyone for joining.